Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session pitch called Inspiring Examples for a Gender-Equal Green World. My name is Maria Onat, and I work as a stakeholder relations trainee with the European Institute for Gender Equality. I have a background in environmental protection and management with a specific focus on feminist perspectives to the European Green Deal, and I'm going to be your moderator for this session today. Today we are gonna hear from two different good practice owners who will share their projects with us, and this will be followed by two short Q&A sessions where you can ask them all of your questions. But before I'll hand over to them, I'll give you some more background information about this topic first. So we all know that climate change is one of the biggest challenges of our time. And to counteract these developments, the European Commission launched the European Green Deal in 2019. It aims to reach net zero emissions by 2050 while promising economic growth decoupled from resource use. And it also wants to make sure that no person and no place will be left behind. However, we all know that climate change has critical impacts on human rights and inequalities as well, especially gender inequality. And to understand these gender dimensions, the European Institute for Gender Equality launched an information campaign about the Green Deal and gender equality last year. And it produced a report that presents 12 good practices, which basically talk about how gender mainstreaming can promote the green transition in general. And yes. So the selected good practices have a wide range of different gender mainstreaming tools. Most of them use gender analysis and gender awareness raising. They were used in all of the good practices presented in the report, and the majority of the projects have gender training, sex disaggregated data, and gender indicators, whereas 25% have gender responsive public procurement. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, we will hear from two different good practice owners, and the first pitch is going to be from the Milan's Gender Atlas, which is a manual for a more inclusive city. And then you will have 5 minutes to ask your questions, and after that, I will hand over to Oxfam Belgium, who will introduce you to an educational tool that has women at the heart of climate change. So, with further ado, I will hand over to my colleagues Florencia Adreola and Azzurro Musonigro from the Milan's Gender Atlas.
Okay. So hi everybody, thank you so much for having us and this invitation. So I will briefly introduce you our work. So my name is Azzurra Musonigro and Florencia Andreola. We are both architects and urban researchers. We started to develop, can I go? Yeah. So we founded in 2022, but started the research in 2020. An association for social promotion. It's called Sex and the City, because we launched, let's say, this project, which is an observation of the city of Milan from a gender perspective. We started this, let's say, as a response to a call that was asking, by the municipality was asking research projects for the city, so we proposed this kind of perspective. So it was 2 years of research which led to the publication of the Milan Gender Atlas, which aims to be, let's say, a tool for public administration to develop, let's say, policies that are more sensitive to gender. Okay, so let's say following this publication, we let's say, developed proper methodology, which includes, let's say, as you were saying before, you know, data that are disaggregated by gender and mapping of what is there and what is missing. So, let's say, an atlas should be, let's say, developed together with public administration because it's addressing them for producing a more inclusive policies, let's say. So it highlights strengths, So what is already there in cities, responding to the needs in everyday life of women and gender minority? Where are the gaps? You know, and also, let's say, mapping what services are provided top-down, but also what emerges from grassroots initiatives, because many times where, you know, a need is not met, then citizenship organizes, and that's a resource. So the objective, let's say, is to gain a deeper insight into gender disparities and the varying needs in the use of the city, and also, you know, raise awareness, public awareness on this topic. I will briefly go just to show you, you know, this is a map, a complete map that is, let's say, included in the atlas, just to tell you, you know, that the lenses that we use to observe the city, let's say, are these 5. So we, let's say, observe the city of Milan from a, let's say, on the symbolic sphere, we can call, so saying, what's the gender representation of cities? So how many streets, squares are dedicated to men and women in cities? The uses of the city has to do with care work and people who perform that, which Florencia will go more into detail, which means a very specific use of the city. Violence and insecurity, addressing the issue of, you know, the perception of insecurity that women and gender minority feel. Sex work, which many times has to do with public decorum, let's say, so with the idea of invisibilizing and marginalizing this kind of phenomena. And health and prevention, which has to do with, you know, gender health care. All right, so I will hand it over to Florencia to go deeper into some of this sphere. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Azzurra, and thank you, Maria. So one guiding theme of this work is the recognition that women's everyday lives are much more complex than men's, primarily due to caregiving responsibilities, which still disproportionately affect them. So, for example, this complexity involves chained travel patterns, the so-called trip chaining, which public transport systems often fail to accommodate effectively. For this reason, the Atlas maps elements such as the subway stations with elevators to address the autonomy of individuals with disabilities and to highlight the challenges of navigating the city while caring for non-autonomous people. The network of daycare centers is another crucial element, not only to understand their location, let's say, but also to discuss access opportunities, costs, and the need for welfare services that support women, let's say, parenting, let's say, more than women, enabling women in particular to return to work after childbirth. Health services mapped in the Atlas in Milan include the so-called consultori. In Italy, these are women's health centers that support women throughout their lives, but are increasingly being dismantled across Italy. It also identifies hospitals offering voluntary abortion services, a right enshrined in law, but often denied by local facilities in Italy. I'm going fast, I know, but we have to yeah. So the Atlas also identified public restrooms, highlighting a need that disproportionately affect women, who often face additional challenges due to menstrual needs or lack of accessible options, for example. Many, for example, in Italy are forced to purchase items at cafes to access restrooms. So it's quite important to understand if they are there and if they are free, for example, or accessible and clean. And also, a big chapter that the Atlas examines is how fear and violence shape urban life, By mapping areas perceived as unsafe, it provides public administrations to, let's say, with data to tackle the underlying causes of insecurity. Importantly, this is not to stigmatize certain neighborhoods, but to address factors that make some areas perceived as less safe than others, and so we can take care of them and work through this issue, which is really, really serious. In this sphere, let's say, the Atlas also maps anti-violence centers, which in Milan, although coordinated by the municipality, retain significant operational autonomy. And this reflects, let's say, the grassroots origins of these services, which play a critical role in supporting survivors. And as Azzurra was saying, another focus of the Atlas is the representation of women in urban spaces, such as through street names and monuments and statues and so on. For example, in Milan, only the 3% of public spaces are dedicated to women compared to 45% dedicated to men, reflecting evidently a broader cultural disparity. And just so you know, in Milan, the first statue dedicated to a civil woman was inaugurated in 2021. Yeah, we had a lot of Madonnas instead. So, so now we are developing new gender atlases in 2 other Italian cities, and something very important for us is that the gender atlas is evolving into a digital tool, which not only allows users to locate services around them in their vicinity, but also enables updates and new data inputs. This transformation aims to make the Atlas a dynamic, interactive resource that supports the organization of everyday life for women and gender minorities. And of course, it would be great to develop gender atlases also in European cities, so to shed light in other contexts and offer the possibility of a comparison among different cities. So we hope the explanation was clear, but we are here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Many thanks to both of you for this great presentation, and I will give the floor to you now if there are any questions you want to. Yes.
Hello, thank you. Very interesting presentation, and I'm from Lithuania, and we were part of one of the projects, Safe Cities. So we did small part about the parks and safe spaces for women. So your project is really very interesting. My question is, as you said, you are architects, both of you. Were some other like gender experts involved in this work? One question. The other, who financed this project? And the third one about these all outcomes, how wide they are spread, and is it interest from municipality of Milan to this? And what you see, what can be done better, or which fields can be involved in the future? What was not covered, you think?
Okay, so we are very small, so it's the 2 of us plus another person is the whole team. Okay, so let's say we have a background in urban studies and architecture. We, let's say, studied gender studies additionally, so let's say we do everything. Everything it needs to be done. Okay, so interest from the municipality, let's say, so this project was commissioned by the municipality in the sense that we respond to a call by the municipality, okay, but they were not expecting this. They were asking for research projects in general. We proposed this kind of perspective, which is, let's say, a double-sided, no? So we, on one side, we had the freedom to see and to develop whatever we thought it was interesting. On the other side, they were not expecting anything, so they were not ready, you know, to, like, the municipality got interested, really, in what we were saying, okay? So after that, let's say we presented to the whole municipality altogether, let's say the how can I say, well, the council. And so after that, let's say the singular, the individual counselors, I would like to say, came to us, to some of them, to try to go deeper and to try to develop projects that would actually tackle all the things that we are saying, you know, with the Atlas. So after that, we did projects of, we are developing many projects of participation in many ways. So one, let's say, quite possibly big, let's say, could have consequences is this focus groups with women in different neighborhoods to hear their voices, first of all, and to, you know, co-design solutions. So where are the issues, tackling the different topics, and let's say try to imagine how to change it. So this is a first step that later needs to be, you know, let's say followed by other steps, but, you know.
No, yeah, I just wanted to add that we, after the publication of the Atlas, we focused a lot on fear and insecurity, and we published another book, always commissioned, let's say, by the Municipality of Milan, related to fear and insecurity in public space, trying to draw, let's say, a big picture of all the researches around this topic and trying to understand how Milan is dealing with this topic. So it's, let's say, the municipality pays for these researches, so they funded the work, but I don't know, it's very fragile in Italy, let's say, the condition related to the, say, the interest of public administrations in a gender perspective in public spaces, but we are trying, let's say, to deal with it.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're running a little bit over time, but I highly encourage you to continue the conversation after this session. And I will now hand over to the other good practice owners, Katrien van der Heijden from the Oxfam Belgium.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief, and so we have a little more time to discuss. So what I will be presenting is a tool, an educational tool that we developed at Oxfam Belgium with the title Women at the Heart of Climate Justice. The idea behind this is that we wanted to raise awareness among secondary school children that climate change is something mainly caused in the Western world, as we all know, but that the biggest victims find themselves in the global South and not in the global North. And we wanted to raise this awareness and to sensitize kids on this and to make sure that they see the global perspective of the climate crisis that we face. So we developed this tool about gender and climate crisis, and right from the start we realized we have to present pictures not just of women as victims, but also stories of strong women who are resilient, who try to mitigate the disaster and show the work that they do, but at the same time make people aware of all the gender injustices that exist and these women face. So this is a tool we came up with. It starts with an icebreaker. It's something that the teachers can do in school. So it starts with an icebreaker, which is a picture game. We ask the students to choose a picture that says something about gender and climate, or climate, whatever. And this is just to test a little bit what is their knowledge. Do they understand the concept of gender correctly? Do they understand climate crisis? So this is just something to get the discussion going. Then we get to the main part of the tool, and they are divided into subgroups, and they take on the role of journalists. And they are told that for the evening news, they have to make an item. And the item will be based on a testimony by a woman who is facing the climate crisis and all its difficulties. And you see some examples here of 3 of the women. In total, in the package, we have 8 testimonies. So the class group can be divided into 8 subgroups. So each of these women tell a story. They come from all over the world, and they all tell a story of what the difficulties they faced and how they try to fight the climate crisis. Some of these women are imaginary women based on a lot of reading of women in those countries, what they face. But some of the women are really existing women, like Wangari Maathai, you see there, who won the Nobel Prize for her work in Kenya. So we also included some real people. Now, we had a whole discussion because we risked the problem that students would say, and what about men? They're also victims of the climate crisis, right? But yes, they are, but we wanted to focus on the women. So eventually, we decided to include one woman from the global north who's there, Charmaine Natchez, who suffered the Hurricane Katrina that destroyed New Orleans, to include her story. And then we also included the story of a Belgian, Paul Mettet, who was a victim of the flooding in the south of Belgium that happened in the year 2002. Just to show the kids the students in school, yes, of course, everybody can become a victim of climate crisis, but some people, privileges did he face that the women didn't face, etc., etc. Now, the students then receive additional information besides just the testimony of the woman or man that they are working on, like a newspaper article. They can watch a video on typhoons or land grabbing or deforestation, you know, whatever topic they're tackling. They get some additional information about the country because a good journalist will base an article on different sources. And then they make a little video of the news item where they present the news item. And then we end the training that they can present all their videos together. And so they watch all the other testimonies as well and the articles made about these things. So they get to work and it gets a really interesting discussion going about what are the gender stereotypes that hold back women to get equal rights and you know, when they have to face up to privileges that men have and they don't. And on the other hand, it also starts the whole discussion about climate crisis and how it is unequally divided between the ones emitting CO2 and the ones suffering from CO2. So it's a complex issue to link gender and climate, and we hope we did a good job here. Our tool is downloadable from our website, unfortunately only in Dutch and French, but you're free to download it and translate it, you know, throw it into Google DeepL something, or we can get you the files to do that, that's fine. The more people who use it in their classrooms, the happier we are. So please contact us if you want to get the material, okay? So then we have still a little bit of time for some questions.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the presentation. The tool looks really interesting. I have just a question about, since you've mentioned also Global North and Global South, to what extent did you notice, if any, conversations about colonial legacy or anti-colonial movements have kind of come up as a result of that as a sort of like third angle intersecting with gender and climate?
Yeah, as Oxfam Belgium, we really promote system change. We want to have a system change in the world, a very profound systems change, and that means deconstructing patriarchy, but also deconstructing colonialism, which is still there, the neo-colonial approach that all of us have, the exploitation of resources in the global south countries. And we also want to deconstruct the economic system, which is very neoliberal currently. You know, I don't know if you've heard about the donut economy, but it was invented by somebody working at Oxfam. So we promote the donut economy, which tries to create an economy that looks at the sustainability on a social, ecological, gender level, etc., etc. And so, yes, we absolutely link all those things, because for us, they're part of the same story. We can never solve the climate crisis unless we solve gender inequality, because they're very much linked with each other. We can never solve poverty and inequality unless we also deconstruct patriarchy, because poverty and gender are very much linked, and all of those things. And so this is one of the tools where we get that discussion going, where in the beginning, you know, often the students say, you know, we don't see the link. When we do the picture exercise, they will either pick something that has to do with gender or with climate, but, you know, when you ask, could you think of a link between the two? You know, most of the time you get a blank. But then at the end of the class, they say, yeah, now we really see how it works, how you can be, you know, really gender stereotypes, how you can face up to inequalities. And then on top of that, you get a disaster, and which is also a result of a very unequal distribution in the world of those who emit CO2 and those who suffer the consequences, etc., etc. And yeah, it gets very interesting discussions going. And decolonialism is absolutely a part of that, yeah. As is, you know, racism, sexism, you know, the whole thing comes up, yes.
Hello, my name is Almudena. I come from Spain. I work in the international cooperation sector. I know Oxfam plays a big role. And your presentation, your tool, which I think is amazing, made me think about the work that I do in my everyday life. And I think you've focused your tool on education. I'm kind of wondering if you've thought, or Oxfam has thought, to extrapolate also this to the work that you do in international cooperation, because I feel I work in climate change as well, and I feel like I always struggle about explaining to my colleagues why gender is a fact to be taken care of seriously in climate change. And I think your tool perfectly explains in a very simple way, and it gets the conversation going about how to, like, where the inequalities are. And I think it could be a very useful tool to also raise the level of consciousness in the decision-making process, because I feel like I work for European contracts, and a lot of the time I see like gender is just like a checkbox that needs to be marked, and there's no real change.
Yeah, I can only concur with what you say. It's extremely problematic to get gender properly integrated in the European Green Deal, for example. As some of you might know, currently in the Green Deal, they are making the Social Climate Fund, and that means that every European country has to draw up a Social Climate Fund projects and strategy. And very often, you know, when it is about social climate fund, maybe a little bit of gender is integrated there, and they might think about these things because women are poor and they link it to poverty. But it's very minimal, and it's absolutely not enough, and a huge amount of work needs to be done. Now, we do try this as Oxfam Belgium. We actually have a gender climate specialist, expert. She goes to all the COP meetings. But as you all know, civil society is not really the biggest voice heard on COP meetings and everywhere. So we try to do what we can, but I completely agree with you that there is still so much work to be done. And I would say for anybody out here who's either governmental or non-governmental in this organization, contact your member state governments now and talk to them about the Social Climate Fund and how necessary it is to integrate gender into that, because they might completely overlooked. One of the prerequisites for them to get the money from Europe is that they have to consult with the non-governmental organizations. They have to consult with civil society. So make use of that prerogative that you have as an organization to talk to them. Yes.
So if there are no questions from the floor, we got a question online for the Milan's Gender Atlas, which is, what were the practical outcomes of the research? Did Milan municipality transform the research somehow into some concrete actions?
Okay, more or less we answered to this question before, but let's say that, first of all, in Italy, everything is quite slow when you relate with public administration. So the Atlas was published in 2022, at the end of 21. And so it's only 2 years that it exists. We are, like, let's say, trying to have a conversation, an open conversation with the public administration, so to develop concrete projects, but before doing it, we need to study more, understand better the problems. How do you say? Zoom in the neighborhoods, because if you overlook the city, it could not make so much sense, because cities have many cities inside them. So you have to work in another scale, and we are doing it, but starting, let's say, with the participatory processes. Then it's up to the public administration to transform the city also together with us and whatever, but I mean, we are like talking about it. No, but I'm sure something is going to happen.
Thank you so much for your answer. And on that note, I would wrap up. Thank you all for being here, online and in person. And thank you to both of you that you came today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.